task for today is just to share a little bit about how your experience will be within the classrooms. So before I kind of get into it, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm here in particular. My name's Carlyn Ludlow, and I taught middle school social studies, did some district level work, and then moved on to higher education. I've been in higher education for over a decade, over around 12 years now. And really, I'm one of many, many people who have decided to dedicate their careers to higher education. And not just any higher education, but in particular, our university here. Our university is built with its sense of purpose is all around being able to make sure that we provide classrooms and experiences and departments and research that whose whole purpose is really to make sure that we are educating you guys to the best of our possibility. And here we have our tiny little, what we talk about as our micropolis, our little city. We have 116,000 people here, which for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with what that might look like, that's around the size of Peoria. And we're devoted to one thing and one thing only, to pass on knowledge, all of knowledge that we have to the next generations. We have astronomy, zoology, from music to mathematics, everything to the next generation. Our need here has never been greater for us to be able to pass on this information. How have we shared information over time? Look at this. It's taken us 4,000 years to be able to share information the speed we do. We now have, as of 5 years ago, more cell phones than toilets in the world. And yet, things are speeding up even faster than this. When we look at how fast it's taken us to get to 50 million users of different items, the phone took 76 years. And a few years ago, Pokemon took 19 days. We're speeding up. We used to have information that was given at a little drip. And this is what information is coming to us now. And this is how we feel. We have to figure out a way to deal with this very rapidly changing society, and our only solution is education. So the question that we're here to answer today is, what can Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College do about it? Which is going to start us talking about how do we reimagine education. So in order for us to do this, I'm going to have us set up a little activity. I'm going to separate you guys into two groups. We're going to have students in one group and parents and friends in a different group. I would like all of the parents and friends to please exit for a couple of minutes. I'll call you guys back in for this activity. So just students stay here. All parents and friends are going to exit, and I'll give you guys some direction. Okay, here's your task. I'm going to show you guys a picture. And on your piece of paper, I want you guys to recreate this image. I'm not going to give you a lot of time for it, though. Okay, so I'm going to say a minute and a half, okay, to be able to sketch as best you can. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I just want you to flip over your paper. Put your pencil or pen on top of it so your loved ones don't come on here and try to cheat. And then I'm going to have you guys wait outside, and I'm going to call back in the friends and family and have them do something else. Okay, so here's your task. I'm going to show you guys an image up here. And your whole task is to recreate it as best you can. Just look at the sketch and draw it. Sketch it however you see it. You're going to have just a couple of minutes to do it. Okay, I'm going to have you guys flip these over so we can't see them. And then we're going to call back in the future Sun Devils. Okay, I'm going to show you guys an image, all of you together. You're going to keep your papers covered or over for right now. I just want us to look at it. And then we're going to talk about what it is that we see. I'd like to hear from some of the students. What do we see up here? How would you guys describe this image for the students? Old lady, young lady? So this is one of those optical illusions. If you guys haven't seen something like this before, go ahead and flip over your papers. I want to show you guys actually what you both saw, and then I'll describe to you the point of why we did this. So look up here. This is the image that the student saw. It's the image of a young lady. It looks like she's wearing a necklace and some sort of hair scarf or hat. This is the image that friends and family saw. And this is the image that both of you guys saw. Can everyone see both pictures? The young and the old? It's okay if you can't. Let me point it out for you just in case. So the young lady, this is her nose. And this is her eyelashes. And this is her chin. If you're looking at her, she's got hair here and a big feather up at the top. If you were looking for the older lady and you couldn't see her, this is her mouth. And this is her nose. Oh. Is there anybody that's like, no, I don't have it. I just can't do it. Can't do it. Okay. Which one are you having a hard time seeing? Which older lady or younger lady? The older lady. Okay. So the older lady, let's see how we can describe this. This is her eye, and her eye is shut. If I take this off, does that help? This is kind of like a hair scarf. This is actually the original picture. It was on a postcard in 1888. And you can tell this one has a little bit more pronounced features in the eyes. And maybe you can see the older lady this way, or in this original sketch, the older lady and then the younger lady's face right here. So the reason why I show you this is we spent a very short amount of time looking at this image. And what tends to happen is we have something that are called perceptual effects that impact the way our brain processes things based on how we see. Our most persuasive representation that we have of our reality is what we see. It's our sight. The way that we have experienced our surroundings throughout our lives impact how we see our own reality. In other words, seeing is believing. We've heard that before. So let's look at this study from MIT that said that the human brain can interpret images that the eye sees in just 13 milliseconds. That's so fast I can't even describe to you how fast it is. 13 milliseconds. The longer you see an image, however, the more imprinted it becomes into your reality, into the way that you accept the world around you. Memories that have emotional connections imprint even stronger. So let's think about this. Are schools places of emotion? Yes. Good, bad, challenging, heartbreaking. So imagine us looking at education, and all we've seen is what we know in the past. If our personal perception is limiting us to seeing how education could be formed, because all we've ever known is how it has been formed. Those of you who are graduating soon will have had, in K-12, 2,340 days in school. That's around 14,000 hours, which is a lot of milliseconds. Math is not my area, social studies is my area. When we think about how deeply imprinted our lens of education is, it definitely changes when we think about how we can even change education. If we have so much foundation in what it looks like, that it's really challenging for us to see possibility. When we think of you guys with your 2,340 days at the end of this year, and the average educational professional, people like myself and others in the room and all of your educators that you have had, higher education, K-12 education, who have on average 17 years of experience. They have their K-12 education, plus around 900 days as a college student, plus around 3,000 days as professionals. When we look at how tainted and how absolutely deeply embedded our view of education is, it shows us why it is that we need you guys. Our perspectives need help. We saw the change in technology, and yet education hasn't kept up with those kind of changes. If you looked at that image of the tablet that was kind of carved out and the cell phone next to it, those are dramatically different experiences. But when we think about education, we haven't changed that much, which is why we need you to help us, because we can't do this together. We can research the heck out of it, but we need your perspective. Let's think about this. Schools have looked the same for centuries. And maybe the reason why is because we just can't picture it any other way. So the question is, are schools working? Like, is our K-12 system working? I think we're doing okay. I think we could be doing a lot better. When we think about our past purposes of education, we've gone from a society that looks at, hey, we need to train people to be agricultural workers, or, oh, our purpose of education is to train factory workers or knowledge workers. Here we are in this 21st century where our task is to actually to teach you conceptually. Because I can't prepare you to be a YouTube influencer. I can't teach you how to do that. And by the way, that won't even be a thing in 20 years from now. Our education system is changing so rapidly. Our need is so immense, but yet we still have classrooms that look basically the same. This is our 19th century classrooms, the 1800s. This is what classrooms look like. Oh, and then an entire century later, this is what classrooms look like. And I promise you, I think this is like my 5th grade teacher right here. And, classrooms in the 21st century. We've made some progress. We have. We've done some good stuff. But we need serious fundamental changes in the way that we work education. Because when we think about things, we have around 774 million people in the world who are illiterate. And 2/3 of those, by the way, are women. We have 18 million adults who don't read well enough in order to have a job that earns them a living wage. The cost that we have to deal with illiteracy rates are almost 238 billion just in the United States. And when you look about the incarcerated inmates, 68% of them we would consider functionally illiterate. So is our education system working? We have made a lot of progress. We have. And we've done a lot of great things. But we need more. We need better. We need help. So when we look at what is it that we're training for, we can't be training for agriculture. We're not training for 19th century, 20th century. We're training 21st century workers. And these 21st century workers have to have skills that will allow them to be employed. What do you think some of those skills are? What would be skills if I were to go and ask your employers, what are skills that you want people to have coming in? To be able to show intelligence? Yeah, it's a good one. What's another one?
Communication.
Yes, absolutely. What else?
Social skills.
Yes. Yes.
Problem solving.
Yes. Anything else?
The biggest thing they're looking for is the fact that you can fit in with a team and or work on your own.
Collaborative and independently.
Have that emotional intelligence.
Yes, that's a big one.
To know your surroundings.
Absolutely. Because no matter what it is that we teach, by the time you get out into the field, everything's going to be different, right? The careers that exist today are not going to be the careers that exist tomorrow. So teaching you how to do a career is a thought process of 50 years ago. So our task as educators is to try to meet this need of what employers want. And these are the things that have been listed. This is interesting. Working with people of different generations. When you guys get out into the workforce as students, you guys will have to deal with 4 to 5 generations in one working environment. And that means a lot of conflict. That means a lot of conflict resolution skills that you're going to need. That means having to deal with different cultures, having to develop cultural competency, having to understand the political and societal impacts that decisions make. That you can see how when you make this one decision here that it impacts 15 different layers and potentially all across the globe. How to be a team player. How to address the issues that arise and to mitigate conflict. This is big. How to have civil discourse. How to be very well written and very well spoken. Design thinking. This is an interesting one. What is conceptually the idea of design thinking? Anybody ever heard this before? This is a fairly new skill that we've been talking about. It means that you are looking at your end products from the lens of the user, so that you're creating things that are useful and are purposeful. We have an entire initiative in our college that is focused on design thinking, which means why don't we stop thinking about education from what the teacher wants and start thinking about education from what students need. That's a very different lens to view education through. Another one that employers talk about is interpersonal communication, problem solving, which we said, and the ability to retrain and reskill. So at Mary Fulton Teachers College, we're trying to reinvent education. We have a dean who has been in our college for the last 2 years who is unbelievable. She has such vision for what our college should be doing to help the field, to be the leaders in our field. And she knows, as well as we all know, we can't do this by ourselves because we have so much history that has said this is how education looks. That we are of the mindset that we need your help as much as you need our help. That this is a collaborative effort. There's no hierarchy in education anymore. There shouldn't be. Knowledge is available to everyone. Knowledge used to be power, right? I know you guys have heard this historically, the people who had the most knowledge are the people who had all the power. Well, I have more access to information in my phone than I did all the way through my graduate programs. And yet, we still are an uneducated society and world. So we need help trying to figure this out together because we're not the gatekeepers of information anymore. So when we look at why do we do things like we do? You ever ask yourselves that sometimes? Like, why? What's the purpose in some of the things that we do? For example, why do we teach foreign languages in ways that brain-based research tells us are not productive? What do we do every time you walk into a Spanish 1 class or a French 1 class? What's the first thing you learn? How to conjugate verbs? How to say hello. How to say hello. Right. And to sit there and be able to recite vocabulary and to translate very basic things. But brain-based research tells us the best way to learn foreign languages is to learn whole language at a time, be immersed in it, learn sentences. Your brain will automatically figure out the way the words are supposed to be ordered. So why are we doing things that science tells us aren't productive? Or why are we teaching history chronologically? I was a social studies teacher, and so I love history, but I can't tell you how many students I have now who I say, hey, what was your favorite class in high school? Oh, I like this, I like this. What was your least favorite? It's either math or history. In math, I'm like, can't help you on that one. That's somebody else's task. My job is to help you understand, okay, so what is it that you didn't like about history? Well, it was boring. That is crazy to think that history is boring because history is like a movie coming to life. It is people's interaction with one another. So why do we teach it in the way that makes us seem like it's boring because we can't relate? Why don't we teach it from us forward? What is it that interests us? And then let's look at the social foundations of it, the political foundations of it. Why is technology a separate class? That's absurd to me. Why do we have teachers, especially elementary school teachers, who are expected to be good at teaching all subjects? I know that my children, I've got 2 kids, middle schooler and a high schooler, and I can tell you that today, their love and level of skill and ability for different subjects are highly dependent on the teachers that they had. That's unfortunate. To think that I've got a son who's fantastic at math because he had a 5th grade teacher who was a fantastic math teacher. But by the way, not so great in English. So guess what he struggles in, right? So why do we expect all teachers at an elementary level to do all things? Our Dane thinks that's crazy. So we're in the process of trying to reinvent what this looks like, but we're not the ones that are gonna be in the classrooms. That's you guys. Why do we expect our students to know how to critically think when all we tell them is how to be compliant? How to sit down, how to take notes when we tell them, how to get up and move classrooms when the bell rings, how to make sure that they turn assignments in on time, and oh, don't question me because I'm the teacher. That's crazy to think about. And then they get out into the real world and we question, well, why do these students not know how to critically think for themselves? Why do they not have initiative? Our schools are not set up for that. That has to change. I've got a little video that I want to show you guys that is about the why.
A lot of people don't realize that I actually hated reading for the majority of my life. By the time I was 18, I don't think I had really read a single book unless it was part of an assignment and I was just forced to do it. But ever since I went to 1st grade, my teachers constantly tried to inspire me to read, and it never worked. It just made me hate it even more. And then finally, when I was about 18 or so, I started to find mentors, most of them online, and they were able to inspire me to read almost instantly. And now I can't even imagine a life where I don't read. So what was the difference between my teachers, who tried to inspire me to read for 12 years and failed constantly, and my mentors who were able to do it in basically no time? Well, here it is in the context of the golden circle. My teacher started with the what. You have to read this classic. This is a great book. You have to. Then they sometimes went to the how and said, this is how you read it. But that was it. There was no why. The funny thing is, if I'd asked, why should I read it? They would probably get angry and start yelling. How could you ask a stupid question like that? What do you mean, why should you read a classic? And that anger would mostly come from the fact that they haven't really thought about the why. So they can't really clearly articulate it. Most people, and even most organizations, don't really know why they do what they do. But how are my mentors different from my teachers at school? They had successful relationships, they had success in their businesses, and they said, look, do you want your girlfriend to be attracted to you? Do you want to build a successful business? Do you want to create powerful relationships instead of always getting your emails ignored just like everyone else? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And they were like, okay, good, then pick up a book. Oh, and by the way, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great book. So is The Way of the Superior Man. And I picked up both of those books and read them, and now reading is an inseparable part of my life. That is how great leaders inspire action. Everybody starts from the what, and most people never even get to the why. Most people create a product and they want to tell you about all the amazing features and specifications. They want to tell you about how these features work so well, but the truth is, most people don't care about your what and how. Most people don't want to be told the exact measurements of your CPU. They don't want to be told how the little chips interact with each other so amazingly. They want to be told something like this. We value efficiency just like you do. Here's how we can help you be more efficient. And here's a product that will help you achieve exactly that. And that's exactly what I want to buy. If you tell me my company's going to be more efficient, I want to know more. If you tell me how great your newest chip is, I don't really care. So again, most people start from the what and never even get to the why. You're not going to make that mistake. You're going to know your why, and you're going to start with it because you realize that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
That's a great example of how we need to reframe the way that we think about things. We need to be looking at what other countries are doing. We've got some remarkable role models in the world that are doing some really amazing things. South Korea, Finland, Japan, Malaysia. Some of the things that they're doing, for example, in all of these countries, they only spend 35% of the teacher's time actually instructing kids. Which means that their focus is on making sure that what they're doing in the classroom is the best experience possible because they're given the time to plan, to think, to evaluate what kids need. We need to be looking at our entire system differently. We need to consider, what are we currently doing? What are some of the historical reasons why we do certain things the way we do? Why do we have 9-month calendars? There's a rationale for why we go to school from September to May. Why is that? Yeah. Do you work in the field? No. Yeah, summers are great. Love them myself. But yet science tells us that having that much time off is actually not productive for students. So we do things a lot of times that are very backwards, but having the historical context helps us understand why it was in place then, but then helps us understand maybe when it's time to move away from that. We've got historical reasons for why we start school, high schools in particular, at 7:15 in the morning. Which is why. Why do we start schools at this early in the morning? What do we think?
Well, for us, it's our bus system.
That is the number one reason why, is because of busing, because of transportation. So instead, we put the population that needs the most sleep based on the brain development that's happening, which are middle school and high schoolers, and we give them the earliest start time. That's an absurd reason to do something, right? If you asked a company and you said to a company, hey, why do you do X, Y, Z? And they're like, well, because we got buses. They're like, are you kidding me? Fix the busing problem then, right? You guys need more sleep so that your brains can function better, which, by the way, don't take 7:30 classes. Don't take 8:30 classes. 8:30 seems like sleeping in. Till next year when I have a 9 o'clock class and you guys come late. You're like, oh, it's way earlier than I thought. So let's look at what are some of the reasons why we do things. Why do we allocate time like we do? Why do we have the physical structures of different classrooms like we do? What's the purpose of having certain content be taught in elementary school, middle school, and high school? What's the role of the teacher? What's the role of school administrators and school support staff? We had a project last year, this is pretty neat. Creighton School District, which is not very far from here actually, had this big challenge with their bus drivers. So their bus drivers are hired in the morning, and then they have an enormous break during the day, and then they're hired in the afternoon, right? So these bus drivers were unhappy because how do you get a job, an additional job from 10 to 1:30? And yet the districts can't afford to pay them to not do something from 10 to 1:30. So you know what they did? They trained them how to read to kids. And they trained them how to give them Dibbles tests so that they could look at how do students read at different grade levels, so how can we provide interventions? That can be taught. That's just a way of thinking about things that just makes sense. So us looking at why is it that we do certain things and how can we do them better, taking into consideration all of the skills that we're going to need for the future. That's our task. We need to rethink things like history. What if I told you pick your greatest challenge, whether it's poverty, racism, sexism, wars, relationships? Oh, what if it's something as simple as why are grades important? Or why do you struggle with time management? Whatever your challenge is, and then look at what are the societal and the personal issues that impact that. And look at how far back we can look in history to find evidence of these things. Maybe it has to do with poverty. Maybe it has to do with drugs and alcohol. That's a way more interesting conversation than let's talk about the aqueducts, right? We can talk about aqueducts, but let's do it within the framework of how have we progressed as a society in providing resources to humans. That's a different conversation. That gets people interested. And us looking at, why don't we look at American history through the lens of regions? Or think about if you were somebody who lived in this part of the world in the 1700s, what would be the resources that you would need? What would be the biggest challenges that you have? Looking at it from that empathy-based, that people-first perspective. That's the design thinking that we need to be looking at. I worked with a teacher last year, she's a classroom teacher, K-12 high school. She does the most fascinating thing. Once a week she comes in, she has newspapers and gives them to the students and says, okay, pick out an article. And they pick out whatever interests them, and then their task is to research the historical foundations of that article. So whether it's the Supreme Court justices, that's all over the news, okay, so let's look at, why do we have 9 Supreme Court justices? What's the rationale for that? Why are they appointed for a lifelong term? What's the rationale for that? Those are things that are much more interesting than me teaching you about what the Articles of Confederation says, or what the difference of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is, which you all should know. But us having these conversations about what it means to people, right? When we look at the definition of insanity, I know you guys have heard this before, but we can't create problems, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them, right? We want to be able to have a better place, to be able to think differently, to be able to help reimagine education. And what a better place you guys can be than here and here. We have gone from 35th in the country in 2012 to where 3 straight years in a row we're top 15 in the whole country in the College of Ed. Our teachers' colleges ranked well above other colleges around the nation. Why? Because we try to look at things differently. And why? Because we try to get you invested as much as we're invested. This isn't my task. This is our task. We're looking at education through this design lens. We know what it takes to create educators in our college. It takes 2 things. The first thing it takes is for us to be creative entrepreneurs. This is an interesting word, entrepreneur. We all know the more common term, right? What is an entrepreneur? It's somebody who's looking to make change, but looking to make change from within a system. It's really easy for all of us to criticize systems that we're not a part of. But our task is to create change within the field. The second thing we want to do is to make sure that we're always doing it with character, that we're doing what's good for kids, and that we're doing what's good for the grown-ups in the room and for the adults and for the professionals, that we professionalize our profession. We owe that to ourselves. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot to do. Welcome to ASU and Mary Lee Fulton Teachers College. Thank you.